Yep.
So I love real estate because it's real, right? And also the last thing I'll say about this is compared to the stock market or the cryptos or the NFTs or, they can go up and down, man. And in the beginning, and they don't provide cash flow. And you can't leverage them like you can real estate.
If you're the one talking to sellers or clients trying to just close every single deal or sale, that takes a lot of time and effort from you. If you got to deal with all the customer complaints yourself, it's pretty mentally draining. And if you run a small business with very few people, then yeah, you are the one doing all of these things, and it is much harder. Things are a lot easier when you're bigger and you've got people in different departments. They're handling the day-to-day issues, and it allows you to focus on the big picture things that are going to really drive the business. I want to spend like 2 hours just kind of going over everything that I learned at Grant Cardone's office last week, because I think it's so applicable to what we're already doing, and so many of the things that we've done, we've unknowingly done that literally like are on the path to building a billion-dollar company. The first thing that stuck out to me that he said was, when you find something that works, do it again. Literally nonstop. It's true, because I always think about trying to do things differently and keep it fresh and all this crap. And it's like, literally, if it works, you just do it nonstop until it doesn't work. It's like, yeah, we've been running the same TV commercial for 3 years. Like, it just still works. Another thing Grant said is that you can't really stay small. It actually becomes easier once you're bigger. And I actually resonated with that because I thought about it when we were small. And I'm like, yeah, back when I started the house flipping company, I'm out there going to flips. I'm out there going to freaking raise money, find deals. I'm having to do everything. And the moment things got bigger, it got easier. I was like, I work less. And Grant said the same thing. He's like, today I work way less than I've ever worked in my life. You can't afford to play small because playing small is actually harder. It's less profitable. It's more work. And you're gonna get passed. I understand why he thinks the way he thinks now with just 10xing everything. Whatever your goal is, 10x it. If our goal is to make, say a company's goal is 10 million, what would it look like to be at 100 million? Like, think about that. And you start thinking differently. You're like, okay, if we had to go for 100 million, what would we have to do differently? And you start thinking through the problem and you're like, okay, that means we need to have these departments, okay? The product we currently sell is not enough. We could not sell enough of this to get to 100 million. So what would the product look like to get there? And so you start processing it in your mind of what it would look like. And then you're able to say, okay, that is the path to get to 100 million. Execution is the only thing that's preventing it from being there. And he always thinks about being controversial. He's like, you need 50% of the world to hate you, like literally hate you, in order to take it to the next level and be huge. He's like, if you want to be the president, 50% of the people need to hate you for you to be the president. He's like, if everyone just thinks you're an okay guy and they have no opinion about you either way, you're never going to get big. Nobody's big doing that. You look at LeBron, you either love him or hate him. You look at Brady, you love him or hate him. Any of these guys, there is no guy that's just universally beloved by everybody, right? You look at Jesus, that's what it is. Let's talk about the second half of what I learned with Mr. Cardone. And I also started to wonder, why do these other guys I know, like Ed Milet, why are they buying these $20, $40 million properties on the beach? Why would Cardone buy one of those properties? Those don't make sense cash flow. And it's like, literally, there are only, call it 20 properties on that beach ever. They ain't going away. These are like scarce properties that will never, you can't buy it. And they're one of a kind. And I was just like, it makes sense why they buy that, because they're willing to put their money there to store it for value. Because at some point, some rich guy knows he's gonna wanna live on that beach, and there's no other way he can live on that beach. There's only 20 properties that could actually live on that beach, and 19 people don't wanna sell because they're rich too. They don't give a crap. At the end of the day, what do you gotta give up? And, when I look at my life, to get to the part of my life I'm at today, I've always had to give up things to get there, and so, for instance, when I started flipping couches, I gave up kind of like my pride. I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna do this, like, whatever. And it ended up being really good. And, I gave it up and had success, right? Then I realized, okay, for me to actually be a great house flipper, I've got to give up flipping couches. And that wasn't like an easy thing because, as many of you know, like that was my day job. And so it's like, man, are you willing to give up your income and your only stream of income to like pursue this new thing? Like, how many of us have been there before, right? Like, it's not easy giving up that thing that is your safety net. Then I realized that social media was something that I had to pursue. I thought it was going to be this enormous thing. And I had to give up something though. It's not like I can just go start making content tomorrow and like my life will be the same. It's like, no, what happened was, I had to give up like working full time with Home Run Offer as our guy who closed all the deals and talked to all the wholesalers and, went on appointments. Like that financially hurt us a lot because I had to go train my replacement. He's not going to be as good as me. He's not the guy on TV. It's like I had to give it up. And I said, you know what? Even if this loses me 6 figures a month that we could have made had I stayed in this, I believe in order for me to get to the next level, this is what I have to do. And I was willing to make that sacrifice. And obviously it worked out really well, quicker than I thought. But I knew going into that sacrifice, I was like, I got to give it up. And if it takes me years to finally break through, I know in the long run it was the right decision. If it doesn't pay you, then it's not an asset.
Your house is not an asset.
A house is one of the dumbest, worst investments a human being could possibly make for one reason. You have to pay the house doesn't pay you. And if it doesn't pay you, it's not a good investment.
This is the whole premise on why Grant Cardone and many others don't think your personal home is an asset. Assets are things that make you money. Liabilities are things that don't make you money, but you have to pay. And when you think about it, it's a simple concept. Just buy things that make you money and rent things that don't. But why is it that people like me and other financially savvy people still buy a personal home? In this video, I'm gonna explain why I disagree with him on this one. But in order to be objective, I'm gonna present both sides of the case and let you make the choice. So we know the general definition of why Grant thinks it's bad, but let's look at a couple of other clips where he goes a little more in depth.
What if a bunch of bankers sitting around drinking bourbon? Dude, we need to lend more money. We gotta lend money out, man. That's how we make money. We get people to give us $1. We lend it out 9 times. I read that book when I was a kid, man, when I was 16 years old.
So I totally agree with Grant that the bank system created the mortgage in order to sell more money. The book that I think he's referencing to in this clip is called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And if you read that book, you'll understand how the banking system came about and what actually is happening when you deposit money. Most people had the misconception that every time you deposit $1 into the bank, it means that the bank can now go lend your dollar to somebody else and make interest. They give you 0.01% for your dollar, then they lend it out at 4%. But that's actually not what happens. Grant mentions that every time you lend them $1, it gives the bank $9 to go lend. And what he's referring to is the fractional reserve banking system. For a long time, what it meant was they only had to have 10% in reserves for the amount of loans they actually had out. So if they go and lend $1 million, they need to have $100,000 in reserves. So by definition, if I deposit $100,000 into that bank, it now gave them the power to go lend $1 million. But the thing that people don't think about is, where does that extra $900,000 come from? It's not like the bank got it from the depositors. The reality is that money is being created out of thin air. Much like how the stimulus money was just printed, the Federal Reserve has the ability to print even more money every time a bank goes and gives a loan. And so this is one of the biggest ways to increase the money supply and in turn increase inflation. But most Americans have no idea that this is happening behind the scenes. But the crazy part is, during the pandemic, they got rid of even that reserve. Now, in order for the banks to go lend $1 million, guess how much money they need to have?
I don't even know, I can't even tell you that.
That's right. 0. The bank can go and lend as much money as humanly possible, as long as they have a product that the buyer qualifies for. It's pretty scary when you think about it, that you depositing money into the bank really doesn't do anything. But nonetheless, the reason I bring this up is because I do agree with Grant that the banking system as a whole is pretty much just a scam. The government has been printing money far longer than we've realized. The stimulus and the pandemic have just brought it to the public eye more. So every time you do buy a personal residence, just know that you are feeding into this system, which Cardone obviously doesn't like. Personally, it doesn't bother me, even though I know that's how the game is played. It just kind of is what it is. We're all playing the same game, and the rules are what they are. Another reason Cardone thinks you shouldn't buy a personal home is because we are becoming a renter society.
We're moving into an environment where people are going to own nothing. People are going to rent clothes. They're going to rent furniture. They're going to rent cars. We're not going to own cars. It's already happening where people are leasing now more than they're owning.
I also agree with this, that we are going to become a subscription-based world. I do believe you're going to end up renting most of the things that you do today. People are going to stop buying cars once self-driving cars happen. These companies like Tesla, Uber, and Google are going to be able to give you taxi rides for insanely cheap because they have self-driving cars. They don't have the cost of a driver. It's going to be far cheaper than owning a car, and you don't have to deal with any of the liability or headache. And that's just one example where the world is going to change, and there are countless others as well.
Houses were built for banks. They weren't built for people. They were built for banks. And then the people were lied to and said, oh, a house is a great investment. A house is one of the dumbest, worst investments a human being could possibly make for one reason. You have to pay the house doesn't pay you. And if it doesn't pay you, it's not a good investment.
Now, even though those are some good points, I'll add a few more that Grant doesn't mention. For one, if you do plan to move a lot or you just got a new job that you're unsure of, I think that renting makes a lot of sense. It cracks me up when I see a brand new athlete buy a home in the city that they're playing in. The odds in pro sports are that you are not going to be in that city for more than a couple of years. So I don't know if I'd advise athletes buying homes in these cities that they play in, but if they want to buy an off-season home, that's totally fine, because that doesn't matter where they're playing at. But if you're working a job where you're constantly moving or you're trying to get a promotion that's in another city, then I probably wouldn't buy a primary residence. Another reason I wouldn't buy a primary home is if you had a skill that allowed you to make a great return on your cash. Maybe you're a really good crypto trader, or maybe you want to invest in your business and you have a choice. You can use the cash to do those things and make a lot of money, or you can use the cash and buy a primary home and then not make money. In that scenario, I'm gonna say use the cash for your skill. But other than that, those are really the only times where I think renting is a better choice. Let's talk about where I disagree at and where buying a primary residence makes sense. I believe by renting, you're missing a huge opportunity on getting a low down payment owner-occupied loan. That was kind of a mouthful, but let me explain. When you are going to live in the house, you are able to get either a 3% conventional loan or a 3.5% FHA loan, or if you served in the military, a 0% down VA loan. That's a huge opportunity to own real estate with very little money out of your pocket. And if you're willing to hold it long term, there are very few ROIs that are better than that. Think about it. Let's say you bought a house for $300,000 today. If you got a 3% loan, you're gonna pay around $10,000 down. And let's just say in 30 years, that home is worth $1 million now. And by then you've paid it off as well, so you've got $1 million asset that only cost you $10,000 to get in. It's a pretty good return if you ask me. Another problem I have with it is you're missing out on appreciation. Let's do a quick test. How many of you have been renting for the last 10 years? If you have, leave a comment below because I'm really curious. My guess is you're getting extreme FOMO at this point. Throughout the last 10 years, everybody has been saying throughout different periods that there's gonna be a crash or a market correction. But instead, prices have just continued to surge year over year. I remember in 2011, I bought my very first house for $160,000. I was 22 years old, my cousin and I bought it together and did a house hack. I ended up selling it 2 years later for about $215,000. Take a minute and guess what that house is worth today. It's worth around $500,000. So in 10 years, this house tripled in value, and I didn't even really get a good deal. In hindsight, it would have been better if I would have just bought it, rented it out, and kept it this whole time. But I did gain some of the appreciation because even though I sold it, I would end up buying another one. I would let that appreciate, sell it, buy another one, and just continue to do it over and over again. But if you've rented this whole time, then you probably have a lot of FOMO. Another reason where buying the primary residence makes sense is if you value it being yours. I may seem like a robot or unemotional sometimes, but here's the truth. I'm pretty sentimental to the things I do own. In our current house, I custom built our backyard. I've got a basketball court with the Future Flipper logo. I built our pool the exact way I wanted it. It's custom to my liking. And if you've watched my dream home videos where I'm building my new house on a mountain, then you'll see that I do value having things the way that I want them. But the reality is, if I rent, that's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna go spend all this money customizing someone else's house. And even though this may seem like frivolous spending, I do think it gives me a return. If I'm enjoying where I'm living on a daily basis, my mind is clean, I like what I'm doing every day, that in turn is gonna make me way more productive at work and allow me to make more money. So I'm a huge advocate of spending some money on where you live, because it does play a huge role in your mental health and creativity. The other part I disagree on is it may not always be a liability, as they call it. Maybe it starts out being your primary residence, and yes, it's not making you money. But maybe a year or two later, if you bought it right, you decide that you want to rent it out and cash flow. Well, now it is making you money, and you probably have very little money into it because you got a low down payment loan. The other way I look at it is I essentially am renting to myself when I buy a house. Right now, my current home, my mortgage is around $3,500. I were to rent it fully furnished, my guess is I could get $6,000 a month. And I know this because if I wanted to go rent a different house and rent mine out, I know what it would cost. It'd be a lot of money. So to me, knowing that, I feel like by living in my house, I'm getting a really good deal on my rent. Also on top of that, I bought it for $600,000 3 years ago. I put some money into it, like I said, but as of today, it's worth around $1 million. So I'm very happy that I bought it as a primary residence because I have options now. When it comes time to move into my dream home when it's built, I can either sell the home and make some money, or I can rent it out at $6,000 a month and make cash flow. Doesn't seem like much of a liability to me. Another point I'll make is that if the market does tank, then owning real estate could potentially look bad. But both Cardone and myself have gone on record many times saying that we think the market is gonna continue to go up. So if you believe that, then it probably makes sense to own as much real estate as you can.
Super excited not only to have you guys all in the office to hear what Grant shared, because it's insane. Despite recessions, we've had record years, and this is something that has been repeated throughout his entire career. You'd have to be hiding under a rock right now to not know that we're going into a challenging time. And so we really wanted to reach out and share what has made us so successful over the last 30 years that he's been in business. And so it really revolves around 5 main things. And so I just want to take you through 5 areas where we believe the foundation of success is fortified. And the first place is the mindset. Within the organization, how is the mindset being set? How is think and possibility and opportunity being communicated to everybody, even when people are losing their mind a little bit? So we're gonna go to Grant's office first, because that's really where it starts. For most people, it's actually counterintuitive to do the things that are required to grow. Whether it's because of how they're brought up, or their environment, or education, whatever you want to call it, they limit themselves. And until you can get around people who are doing big enough things, your thinking will continue to be limited. And so right here in Grant's office, this is like where the intention is set. You know, we've got 258 employees here today. Like, I was the sales team, the marketing team, like I was everything back in the day. We started in the pool house. So whether you're just getting started in business or you have a mature business and a bunch of employees, you need to control your mindset. And it's like, especially when, you know, news and social media, like everything's so accessible these days, like it's really easy to be influenced by the things that are going on around you. And if you don't have a strong foundation in your mindset and the way that you're approaching your business, your income, your life, then you will break. And so one of the unbreakable characteristics of our organization is the mindset, that 10X mindset that Grant has set for us. And then as we've grown, you know, it's pushed down through leadership, through senior leadership, through mid-level management, so that even with 258 employees, when the staff is showing up every day, they share that same mindset.
I love it. Yeah, I can tell you, just being in Grant's office, you can see that everybody here has that 10X mindset. It's not like a gimmick that you might think it could be. Like, people here are ready to roll, man. Like, they're intense.
You know, it gives us the confidence to know that we can do more. And that's the role of the leadership. And whether, again, you're leading yourself or you're leading a team, your job is to instill confidence in the people around you, that they can rally behind you. And so where I want to take you next is sort of like where the mindset starts becoming real, because I don't know, maybe you guys have experienced this before, where like you get inspired and you're gonna do something, you think you're gonna do something big, but then you really don't know what to do. and then you lose that moment of inspiration.
Right.
So I want to take you to the marketing department next, is because the first step in the success of any business is you have to promote.
Right.
If people don't know you, they can't do business with you.
Nope.
They don't know you, they can't flow you. That's kind of like the saying that we have, right?
Well, I think Grant's known a lot for sales, but he says it all the time. Marketing is the number one thing. Like,
Marketing is senior to sales, yeah. So, you can have, if you're great at marketing and you're terrible at sales, you can build $1 billion company. But if you're terrible at marketing and great at sales, you can build a limited size scale company. So we always say that like sales can make you rich, but marketing can make you wealthy.
Right.
The first thing you have to do is you have to start creating content.
Right.
You have to start getting on platforms and figuring out how they work.
Yeah.
You have to start figuring out how people respond to your message.
Right.
You got to identify the problems that people have that they're actually willing to pay to solve. And so this room right here is where we handle that. So we've got about 60 people on the team here. Maybe 20 of them are remote, but in here we're doing web page design, we're doing email automations, we're doing media buying, copywriting, events and fulfillment. You'll notice that we have
KPIs.
Stats for events over here, daily statistics that are constantly rotating. And you'll see that kind of in every area.
Right.
Numbers don't lie, people do.
Yeah.
And so every area we're very statistic heavy. This is where the promotion starts, and we start getting attention.
Yeah.
We start getting known.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, you have this customer's attention. Now, what do you do with it?
Right.
And so once you get somebody's attention, I mean, they don't become a customer until they buy your product.
Right.
And so where I want to take you next is
Okay.
the sales department,
Okay.
because that is where you make a customer. Sales isn't about sales. Sales is about customer service.
Right.
Because, like until somebody buys something from you,
Right.
they can't benefit from the knowledge and the expertise that you have.
Right. You
So
don't
they-
even know if they've taken any action with you or anything, right?
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
just
and
consumers.
And they're never going to be successful doing the thing that you're trying to help them doing unless they become a customer.
Right.
And so we put a lot of emphasis on the sales department being where we actually serve the customer in the way that they need it, which means they get the access to the information that they need.
Guys, we got a guest in the boiler room. Let's light it up.
Yeah.
Let me get 2 drops in the 10X.
10X. This is where the mindset of the company, this is the tip of the spear, right? We have all these people, we're talking to customers every day, we're trying to figure out how to get our product or service in their hands. But at scale like this, it didn't just happen overnight.
this is
We
crazy.
had to figure out process for training and onboarding and hiring and recruiting, and these guys are on a call right here, and that's his manager right there.
Yeah,
He's on
they're
the
trying
phone
to
right
close
now.
it.
They're trying to close the deal right now, and the manager is literally on the call with him, helping him close the deal.
Right.
He's listening to the customer. He's telling the customer what to say.
Right.
So we're constantly coaching people so that they can perform at a high level. Because our goal is to take people with little to no sales experience and turn them into multi-6-figure producers within 18 months. That can't happen unless you have process and team and mindset so that people
these guys'
actually come.
mindsets, it all starts with mindset, like you said. These guys, you can just see they all have a similar mindset.
Most of them have moved from their home state to come work for us. The majority of the people are not from Florida here.
Right.
And so they're coming because of the opportunity. Because when you start doing the messaging and the promotion the right way, then the word gets out.
Yeah.
And so when these guys start doing their job, start selling customers our products and services, the next level of scale starts to kick in.
Okay.
And that's having successful customers.
Okay.
And so I want to take you to our customer success department right now.
Okay.
Because this is really where, we take one customer and we turn them into a salesperson for us.
Wow.
Because one customer should get you at least 2 or 3 more customers.
Right.
But one unsatisfied customer can cost you 10 deals. Or more.
Right.
And so we take a lot of importance. We put a lot of importance on making sure that people are winning with our product.
Right.
And so the coaching team is up here. The customer success team is up here.
Right.
Customer service and support. They're on Zoom calls and coaching sessions, making sure that people are winning with the product.
Right.
Because again, that you can't experience that full evolution of customer doesn't know you to customers winning with your product to customers an advocate for you and they're sharing with you and if they're not successful with the product. So we put a ton of importance on making sure that people are winning. And if you think about so we've set the right mindset, for the organization. And if this is you as a solopreneur or you're an employee, it's the same formula.
Right.
The second thing is marketing and promotion of who you are, who you serve, the problem you solve, your market, everything that the customer would need to know that they'd be a good fit with you.
Right.
Then you got to convert the customer. Then you have to support the customer so that they're successful. The thing that's kind of like the through line through all of that is communication.
Got it.
Because to have the right mindset, you have to communicate.
Right.
You have to communicate that either to yourself,
Right.
to your small team or to your big team.
Right.
You have to communicate to your audience
Right.
through marketing. You have to communicate with customers when you're on a sales call back there in the room to make sure that you can convert the customer.
Right.
And every single one of these people is communicating with our customers to make sure that they're winning.
Right.
And so the last place that I want to take you is where a ton of communication happens. It's the studio. And this for some people could be like overwhelming. They're like, oh my gosh, like I'm just getting started. Like I don't even know how to use an editing program on a computer. The beautiful thing about the phone today is it's more advanced than when Grant started.
Right.
In 2009, it was like this little iPhone that was all square, with a terrible camera. Today, the phone is the gateway to all of this. Like you have to start here.
Yeah.
And so many people are creating content off their phone now. For a lot of people, this is going to be the first severe recession that they experience in their professional career. And so we're really leaning into supporting people in those 5 areas so that they know exactly what it takes, not to break, but to actually be unbreakable.
What do you think is the biggest step from going, 0 to millionaire and then millionaire to billionaire? How does it differ?
Yeah. So in the beginning, at least I was just hungry, man. I was like, and disgusted and disappointed with myself. So I remember being 25 years old, man. And I was really from like 19 to 25. I was just on a daily disgusted regiment. I was disgusted with myself. Every day I looked at myself. Couldn't keep a job. I had 7 jobs, fired from all of them. Ended up being a car salesman. Hated that. Like disgusting. When I was single, so I'd meet a girl at the club or the bar or something, and she'd be like, "What do you do?" "I'm a car salesman." And she'd have this disgusting, like this look of disgust. And so, in the beginning, man, I was just trying to like get something together that I was proud of, and I wanted to be proud of me. And the only way I could measure that was, can I get a little money? And so the first $1,000, Ryan, was the most important money I've ever made in my life. I've made billions of dollars. Like in my career, I've sold $1.2 billion worth of products and services over the internet. We've accumulated $4 billion worth of real estate. And some of you see the life, the helicopters and the planes and all the crazy bullshit. But the first grant I made, when I went from $3,000 to $4,000, that was the first time I was like, oh, wow, I have control of my life. It was a big reward for me. It was the first time I had a little victory in about 8 years. And then I started putting my life back together. I had a drug problem, like you mentioned. I had a self-esteem problem that a lot of people don't know about. Tremendous disgust with myself as an individual, disappointed with me. And I spent a lot of time working on myself to get my confidence back, to get my self-esteem back. That took a lot of me cleaning up some damage that I had caused along the way. But going from that to $1 million was huge. The move, the rest of the move, going from $1 million to 10 million, is different. And the game I'm playing now is even more different. It doesn't really get any easier, I'll tell you that. It gets a little more complicated, a little more challenging, and it gets a little more fun. But the one consistent thing that hasn't changed the entire time is people. People have made all this possible. The first 1,000 and the first billion. It was always people involved. Exactly what I did on Undercover Billionaire. I did not put my attention on money or the business. I put my attention on meeting the right people, qualified, able, and willing people that could actually help me and were willing to help me and were qualified to help me.
Right. 100%. So when I look at your businesses and your career, I see obviously a lot of different businesses, but the core ones being, everything associated with 10X, whether it's the events, the courses, the everything with 10X. I see Cardone Capital, accumulating $4 billion in real estate. And then I see Grant Cardone, the personal brand. So tell me, what do you think out of those was the most important for getting you to $1 billion?
Golly, man, let me see. What's the most, the real estate, the real estate, you can't fake the real estate. It's got addresses. Look at the deal I'm doing right now. It's on Los Olas Walk in Fort Lauderdale. All I have to do is say Los Olas Walk, Fort Lauderdale. If you've ever been there, you're like, oh, I know that. The location's sick. We own 12,000 units, bro. My name's on all of them. 10X Living, 10X Los Olas Walk, 10X Boca, 10X Austin, 10X Houston, Texas. So when we start branding stuff, if people didn't know who I was or didn't know 10X, it wouldn't matter. It'd just be another name on a building, right? But the buildings, I think the real estate has been the most substantial, significant thing I've done to separate myself on the internet from being a personality to a real business. And the problem with the internet is all the fraud that goes on. And, anybody can say anything. Like, everybody photoshops everything. Filters are everywhere. The 7-figure claims and the 9-figure claims, they're everywhere. So, your business, you got True Books, right? You help, that business is real. Like, it's real. You're helping people do their taxes. You're not just doing some claim about a diet on Instagram. Your physical body, like the fact that you take care of yourself, it's real. People are going to watch this interview and be like, that dude put that, how old is that guy? People ask this question all the time. How old are you, bro? Like, when you take care of your body, you can't inject something that does the work for you. But you can inject stuff on the internet that creates a persona that's not true. We've all seen that happen.
Right.
So when you put together, I think it's a combination. I'm healthy. I'm having fun. I'm buying real assets. I'm letting real people, everyday people, invest with me as a partner. It's not just me getting rich here like Blackstone, Goldman. I'm giving back on the internet every day. I got beautiful kids, beautiful wife and marriage. I'm taking time with you today. All that becomes a combination. That makes the meal that you can serve to the public that hopefully they find value in and pay for.
So speaking of real assets and real estate, there's a whole bunch of ways to invest now, and everybody's, trying to start an online business or courses or, crypto and Forex. You see all these things, man. Is it still your belief, even with the world changing and all this technology, that real estate is the best way to go?
Well, I think the best way to go is the business that you have. There's nothing better than a great business, right? So, my primary businesses we've done $1 billion worth of sales on the internet. We'll do 150 million this year. That business is freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Let's say I net a third of that after expenses, salaries, employees. That's a lot of money, man. $45 million in cash.
Yep.
What I do with the money, though, the real estate, to me, the best thing about real estate is I can take the big money or a little bit of money and I can push it into an asset that grows by itself. It does not need me to make it grow. And so all I got to do is tell people, hey, that's our building. Take care of the tenants, buy a great location. There's no investment class that offers the leverage, the tax write-offs, the cash flow, and the appreciation in my mind that real estate does.
Yeah.
Some guy told me yesterday, he's like, your real estate compared to Amazon. Amazon did 16,000%. I said, 16, bro, I got deals that I did 7 years ago. I did a deal. I bought it for $58 million. I put 15 million down. I refinanced it after 6 years, took out my 15 million plus 50 million. Okay. Both of those were non-taxable events. And I still own the 1,100 units, and they pay me $4 million in cash a year. That's 16,000% times an infinite number.
Right.
And I will own it. My kids could own that asset class into perpetuity.
Yep.
So I love real estate because it's real, right? And also the last thing I'll say about this is compared to the stock market or the cryptos or the NFTs or, you know, they can go up and down, man. And in the beginning, and they don't provide cash flow, and you can't leverage them like you can real estate. So the three benefits, and you don't get the tax write-offs. If you go sell your Bitcoin right now, you bought in at $50 and you sell today, you will be paying taxes on $65,000 per Bitcoin. So same thing with your NFT. If you bought it for whatever, 1,000, you sell it for $1 million, you're paying taxes. You're going to pay the highest taxes, tax rate. I'm buying a $260 million building right now. I'm going to get $100 million of depreciation for the first 10 days of December that I own it. And so, that real estate class, just that class of asset, because I know, you're in the flipping and the wholesaling game. I'll bet you regret most of the stuff you've sold if you're buying good stuff in good locations.
Oh yeah, I mean, the stuff I sold 5 years ago, doubled, tripled, you know what I'm saying? And I'm with you. That was the reason, we started buying multifamily as well. We just closed on our first big apartment, 334 unit in Georgia. And, same deal. It's like, yeah, I have my businesses that make me money. We got True Books, we got courses, we got everything that you talked about. And it was like, man, how do I offset this income and put it somewhere? Well, you just buy big buildings and, you don't have to pay taxes if you buy enough of them.
And you wait.
Yeah.
And this apartment thing, and I've been saying this for 7 or 8 years now, people are starting to pay attention to me. The apartment game is the housing game of the 1950s on steroids. This is the new game, folks. Like, we are in the beginning stages. You are not late to this game. This game, if you live in a city, anywhere in America, and there you got any kind of positive migration, meaning more people coming in than leaving, you should be looking at the apartment stock rather than buying one house or even flipping a house. I know you can make a lot of money flipping a house.
Right.
You can also lose money flipping a house.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be terrified in the interim trying to figure out whether you're going to make money or lose money. Right.
Right.
And also with supplies. I mean, it's hard to flip homes right now because you can't get the stuff you need to the kitchens and the wood plank, and you can't get the stuff you need to flip that house and, to rehab it. But if you guys would buy apartments, particularly like anything above 32 units, if you can find a 32 unit deal where the rents are $400 lower than they should be, that's $2 million worth of profit right there. If you can just move the rents from $800 to $1,200 on 32 units, you'll make $2 million every time you do it.
People that have invested with him in Cardone Capital. I know people that have gone head to head with him for a real estate deal. So I'm very familiar with everything that he's doing. And despite what I think I know about him, one of the big things that other people want to know about him is his net worth. If we do a quick Google search of what Grant Cardone's net worth is, the first thing that pops up is 300 million. Now look, you should never trust Google on what someone's net worth is, especially when you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. But I can just tell you, knowing what he buys in real estate, seeing what he's done with his brand and all his companies, he's definitely worth a lot more than that. And in fact, he just came out with a show called Undercover Billionaire. And so obviously you can't be an undercover billionaire unless you're a billionaire. And so he went on YouTube recently to finally reveal his net worth. Now the video's pretty long, but I'll just cut to the chase and give you exactly what he said. From his rough estimates of figuring out how much real estate he has, how much his businesses are worth, and everything in between, his net worth is approximately $2.6 billion. Now, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but he also mentioned that they're not really exact numbers either. It's really just a matter of subjective opinion on what his companies are worth, what his real estate's worth, all that stuff. But essentially, he had over $2 billion in real estate assets, and his companies are all worth over $1 billion as well. Now, you might be thinking, what about debts? He's got over $1 billion in debt on his real estate. He's got a few million of debt on his businesses, but all in all, it ended up coming out to about $2.6 billion was his guess. And as he says in the video, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Whatever you want to value his businesses at, you can value it at, but just know that he is worth a lot more than the reported 300 million. That was kind of the whole point of the video. Now, it's impossible to say if that $2.6 billion figure is accurate, but I will mention one thing about his businesses. Much of them are related to him and his 10X brand, so it'd be pretty tough for him to sell it without him remaining in it. He could definitely get a value off the brand from the cash flows that the company produces, but what is the 10X brand without Grant Cardone? He is gonna have to be the one holding the events, doing the trainings, being on social media. So any deal with him would be contingent on him continuing to do stuff for the brand. And I've actually thought about this for my different brands. How valuable are they without me? Could I sell my tax company? Could I sell my brokerage? Could I sell my house flipping company? Could I sell my education company and still get a good multiple, even though they somewhat use me as the brand? I don't know. I haven't tried to sell them and I don't plan to sell them. But the point is, even if I tried to assign a value to all those companies, people would be asking the same things that I'm asking about Grant Cardone selling his. How much are the brands worth without you? Do they even have value? I know a lot of real estate investors try and say their companies have value, but the reality is most of them are not worth anything because the value is tied in the person. The person is the one with the relationships. The person is the one getting the deals. They are crucial to the company, and if you remove that person, the company dies. And so for me, as I build my house flipping company and all my companies, I want to make it so that they do not need me to survive. And I think I'm there with many of them. I don't spend a lot of time in my tax company. I don't spend a lot of time at my brokerage. Even my house flipping company now, they're running very good without me. Now, education, on the other hand, with Future Flipper is very clearly a Ryan Pineda type deal. People want to learn directly from me. They want to be coached by me. So that one really doesn't have any value without me. But if I can build it up into a company where we have other trainers, other coaches, and people that aren't me, it can definitely have some value. But back to the point of Grant Cardone, it's hard to say if that 2.6 billion is accurate for the reasons I just mentioned about what are his companies really worth. Now, as far as the real estate goes, that one is actually cut and dry. If in fact his real estate is worth $2 billion and he owes $1 billion in debt, that makes him a billionaire right there. He's got $1 billion in equity on his real estate. Not to mention, he's also making major cash flow from the real estate. So if I had to guess, I would definitely say he's probably a billionaire pretty much just from real estate, and his companies do have a lot of value. How much? I don't know. And also, I think his show, Undercover Billionaires on Discovery Channel, so I'm sure they did some type of due diligence to verify that he's actually a billionaire if they're gonna name the show this. Now, obviously, that's a big thing that people are discussing about Grant Cardone right now, whether he's a billionaire or not. But there are two other things that I wanna talk about with him that I actually agree with that most people don't. Number one, a lot of people think he buys bad real estate deals. Especially people I know personally who are going head to head with him on these big apartment complexes. They're saying he's way overpaying for these deals. And I know other YouTubers have made videos about him and what he's buying and saying, yeah, he's buying bad deals. But I would actually say he's not. And the reason is they might be bad deals to you and me, but they're not bad deals to him. You see, when you've raised money in a fund, you have an obligation to go get a return on that money. And so you have to make moves regardless of if they're the best deal ever or not. And so the first thing is he's already forced to buy deals that you and I wouldn't buy because he has to. But the second thing is he needs to buy rental properties for depreciation. He makes so much money from 10X and all these other things he does that for him to pay no taxes, which he talks a lot about, he has to buy rental properties. If he buys enough rental properties through depreciation or through bonus depreciation, he can pay no taxes. And if you want to learn more about bonus depreciation, I actually did a YouTube video about it on how to pay no taxes legally. So we'll link to that down below. So even though the deal may not look good on paper, because he is offsetting his taxes, it's making the deal pencil out. And plus, he's got to put the money to work regardless. The second thing that people have a problem with him on is his marketing tactics. Now, as I said, he comes off very arrogant, he comes off very aggressive, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. He also is not afraid to be a contrarian and go against the grain. And the thing is, that's all a part of his plan. He wants people to talk about him. He wants people to make YouTubes about him. I am giving in to exactly what he wants right now. And look, there are a lot of people who hate him because of it, but they still talk about him, still gives him attention. You know the old celebrity saying that all press is good press, as long as they're talking about you, that's what matters. It's kind of becoming that way even more so in social media. if you can go against the grain, people will talk about you. No matter how great of a person you are, people will still hate you. I like to use LeBron as an example because I'm a Lakers fan, and personally, I think he's the best basketball player ever. But even if he's not, even if you think Michael Jordan is the best basketball player ever, people just get so mad at LeBron because someone else thinks he's the best. Like, they legit talk so much crap about him or they hate him because he's not Michael Jordan. They don't mention the fact that he's donating all this money, he's building schools, he's doing great things in the community, he's a great father, he's a great husband, he's never caught in any controversy, like all of these amazing things. He's a great guy by all accounts, yet people still don't like him. And that's just the way social media is and the world in general is once you become famous. And so Grant Cardone, at the end of the day, could care less that people hate him because no matter, even if he came off as a nice guy, people aren't gonna like him. Another example of this is Dave Ramsey. I've done a video about why I don't agree with Dave Ramsey's advice. Many people ask me about him, especially because I'm Christian and he teaches a lot to the churches. I really don't like Dave Ramsey's advice, and I think it's really dumb for business people or people trying to grow wealth really fast. But all that being said, he's a great guy by all accounts. He's helped tons of people get out of debt, and there are many people who love him, but there are also the people who don't like him. And it's not like I don't like him as a person, it's just I don't like his teachings. And so it's just another example of once you're famous and once people know you, there's gonna be haters and there's gonna be people that like you. And this is actually probably a good time to plug my influencer course. If you're looking to grow your social media brand, definitely go check it out. We go over how to become an influencer, how to inspire people, how to impact the world, and how to monetize from it. And I'll just tell you firsthand as somebody who's a very small-time influencer, having a personal brand is great, and I love getting great DMs and a lot of positive comments, but then there are a lot of negative ones. There are a lot of haters. There's a lot of people that just don't like you for no reason. And so that comes with the territory. And if it's something that you don't want to deal with, definitely don't buy the course because that will happen no matter how great you are. People are not going to like you for just the smallest thing. And as I said before, that is one of the reasons why I agree with Cardone's marketing tactics. He just takes it to the extreme. He wants you to talk about him and maybe dislike him. And I'll just tell you, Cardone has some of the most loyal fans I've ever seen. But overall, as it relates to Grant, I have learned a lot from him. I enjoy the 10X concept. No, I don't go and try and 10X all my goals, but I understand why he does it. I enjoyed his growth con. It actually changed my life, being introduced to this whole new entrepreneurial world when I had no idea about it. So I'm forever appreciative for that. As far as Cardone U goes, I wouldn't recommend it to people. I personally didn't get a lot of value out of it. But as I said, I've gotten a ton of value from Grant Cardone as a whole. And let that be the final lesson of this video. You don't have to agree with everything a person does. Just because you like a certain part of them doesn't mean that you like the other part. We're all unique in our own ways, and you're not going to agree with everything anyone does. So remember that anytime you're supporting somebody or you want to learn from someone, just be open-minded and figure out what you can learn from that person.
Over the last few months, I've gotten the chance to hang out at Grant Cardone's office for a few days, and then he came to my office for a full day. And a lot of people ask me, how did I even get into this situation? For the first time at his office, he held an invite-only event that lasted a couple of days, and he was super personal, in-depth with a lot of the people. And we built a good relationship while we were there, but his team ended up hitting me up a month later and said, Grant is coming to Vegas to film his TV show, and we'd love to film it at your office with you. So he came to Vegas with his crew, and we filmed for his TV show, and then at the end, we filmed an episode for my podcast. And during those days, I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with Grant, and I learned quite a bit. The first was a quote that he said I'll never forget, and it was, whatever you resent is an indication of what you should be doing. And it made me really think about that because we're all guilty of hating on different things. Sometimes it's out of jealousy or envy, or maybe we feel like somebody else doesn't deserve that. But a lot of the times it's simply because we know we should be doing what they're doing. For example, I was this way with social media for such a long time. I would hate on all these people who were making content and videos who weren't even doing as much business as me. And the reality was, I knew I should have been making videos as well. This is also true when I would always hate on these online gurus who had education programs. I never wanted to do education because I was just focused on building my own business and being legit. And the reality was, deep down, I knew I should have been doing an education program because not only was it going to help a lot of people, but it'd be good financially for me. And so the reality was what Grant said before. The things you resent are the things you know that you should be doing. And that was the case with me. And that's got me looking at my life and saying, where are some other things that I might be hating on or resenting that I know I should be doing? The second thing I took away from him wasn't even something he said, but it was something that just stood out to me. And it was that I needed to start thinking way bigger. To give an example, the first time we met at his office, it was for an event. And during that time, we got to go walk through the different departments and see all the people. And he also showed us what his morning sales meeting looks like. They had over 100 salespeople in the training room going through their daily routine, and you just see how big this team really is. They're all getting hyped. They're all talking about how much revenue they closed the day before, and they're talking about what's going to happen today. And it was just a really cool experience to see. Then I saw it again when he came to my office to film his TV show. And you see the production crew coming in to film the show and how large of a scale they're trying to do it. And you also see that this guy, despite already being a billionaire and having all these things, is still grinding and still working hard, even into his 60s. And that's just observing him. When you talk to him, you can't help but feel like you need to step it up and start thinking bigger. And in fact, to take it a step further, he says that you cannot afford to continue playing small. Business is actually much harder to run when you're small versus when you're big. For example, when you're small, if you lose one key person, it could crumble the entire business. But when you're much bigger, you've got so many different people that can cover gaps that the business is going to continue to move on no matter who comes and goes. And just overall, it's harder to run a small business because you are usually the one doing everything. If you're the one talking to sellers or clients trying to just close every single deal or sale, that takes a lot of time and effort from you. If you've then got to go fulfill on whatever it is you just sold, that also takes a lot of time from you. If you got to deal with all the customer complaints yourself, it's pretty mentally draining. And if you run a small business with very few people, then yeah, you are the one doing all of these things, and it is much harder. Things are a lot easier when you're bigger and you've got people in different departments. They're handling the day-to-day issues, and it allows you to focus on the big picture things that are going to really drive the business. So I would encourage many of you watching this who are solopreneurs, or maybe you only have 1 or 2 employees, to really figure out how can I grow this thing, because that's what's going to help me buy back my time, make more money, and have less stress. And I can personally attest to this. I had more stress when I was doing it small than I do today. And let me be honest with you, we have way more problems today than we did when I was smaller. But that's what's going to happen when you start scaling a business and you're just doing more and more things. You're going to inevitably run into more and more problems. But when you're not the one always having to solve the problems, it takes a lot off your plate. Third thing I took away from him is that you need to focus on marketing above all else. So going back to the smaller side of business, you might spend the majority of your time just running the day-to-day business, doing normal tasks. Or you might be taking it a step further and you might be the one trying to close deals. But to succeed at the highest level, you're going to have to start focusing on marketing. He point blank said that his number one job for his company isn't to do any of the things I just said. His number one job is to be the best marketer he can be. If he needs to go raise money for a big apartment they want to buy, then he needs to get out on social media and start talking about it. No one else in the company is going to do that for him. If there's a big event coming up, he needs to be the one hyping the event up, getting people to sign up. He's literally just marketing 24/7. Go look at any of his social media platforms and you're going to see a lot of marketing. And this makes complete sense. If you look at all the top entrepreneurs on social media, they spend a large amount of time marketing on social media by putting out content. All of your favorite people, many of which I'm going to be talking about in this series, like Cardone, Patrick Bet-David, Hormozi, Gary Vee, they're all spending a lot of time creating content. Trust me. And if they think it's important, then you should think it's important. And if you're an entrepreneur and you want to learn more about how to do this, you can go to contentempire.io. I've got a coaching program where we teach entrepreneurs how to create content. The fourth was a funny quote he told me, and that was, if you give me some hate, I'll turn it to great. As you can probably figure out, Grant is a guy who comes up with a lot of quotes. As you grow in business and stature, there's going to be more haters that come out of the woodwork. Case in point, I know many of you watching this video are not fans of Grant. I'm sure the comments are going to have a lot of things talking about how he's a scammer and how he's doing this, how he's doing that, whatever. But for probably 99% of those people, they've never met Grant in person, they've never talked to him. The majority of what they base their opinion on is videos they've seen from other people. And the crappy thing about society is we live in a clickbait world where negativity gets the clicks more than positivity. Case in point, the podcast we did together, we put a negative title because we know it will get more clicks. And for me, I asked Grant, I said, how do you deal with that? It's a lot to handle psychologically if all these people are talking crap about you all on the internet. And he said, look, Ryan, I embrace the hate. And I'm over here thinking, I don't want to be hated. I don't want people to dislike me. Who wants that? But the reality is, if you're taking massive action and you're out there and people know who you are, hate is going to come with the territory. You're inevitably going to fail a lot by taking massive action. And the moment you slip up, no matter how much good you've done to that point, people are going to point fingers and the hate is going to begin. So instead of trying to hide from it, just know that it is a cost of growing and doing business and becoming known. And to take his second point of that quote, take some hate and turn it to great, he takes whatever hate is coming his way and turns it into marketing. He showed a YouTube video he made where he said he was going bankrupt. And that's because there were all these rumors on the internet talking about how he was going to go bankrupt and all these things. And so instead of shying away from it, he leaned into it and made a YouTube video that got a ton of views.
Now, on the rumors of my bankruptcy that is soon to happen, yes, it's true. Okay, I'm losing the plane, the condo, all of it's going back to the bank. So if you guys want to get it before it goes back to the bank, call me.
And he's constantly embracing the hate and using it to his own advantage and leaning into it. The fifth thing he said was, what are you willing to give up to get to where you want to go? All big moves require giving up something. You cannot maintain your past life and doing the things you used to do to get to the next level. For example, I started out flipping couches. That was going great, but I had to give it up in order to get into house flipping and devote all of my time there. And house flipping did become really big for me, but eventually I realized that I would have to stop going out on seller appointments and being the guy who was always getting the deals and allow other people to do that so that I could focus on the next level for myself, which was creating social media content. And it's never easy to go through that transition. I had to give up hundreds of thousands of dollars that I could have made during those deals that we probably lost that I would have closed. But that's a cost of giving up something in order to reach the next level. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name's Ryan Pineda. I'm a real estate investor here in Las Vegas. I've flipped hundreds of homes, I've bought hundreds of rentals, and I own multiple companies doing millions a year in profit. If you want to learn about how those companies can help you, go to ryanpineda.com. Now, when I was preparing for this interview, I put down a list of questions that I personally wanted to know. In many of the other interviews I've seen of him, he's been very combative, or he's the one kind of controlling the flow of the discussion. But I wanted to make sure that my questions got answered and that I was able to control the process of it. And so I wrote down questions that I thought would accomplish three things. For one, I wanted them to be questions that he had never really talked about before. Two, I wanted them to be questions that I wanted to know the answer to. And for three, I just wanted them to be questions that he'd really have to think about and would provide great value to the audience. Now, that being said, I was really happy with how he answered some of the questions, but there were some key points that stuck out to me. The first was when I asked him about what is the best opportunity right now in today's world. You've got so many different things going on with real estate investing, with crypto, with NFTs. And I said, Grant, if you had to pick what is the most important one of all of these things, what's gonna make you the most money? And I was guessing that his answer was gonna be real estate, but he actually said the very best thing you can do is start a business.
Well, I think the best way to go is the business that you have. If you have it, there's nothing better than a great business, right? So, you know, my primary businesses we've done $1 billion worth of sales on the internet. We'll do 150 million this year. That business is freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like, so let's say I net a third of that after expenses, salaries, employees. That's a lot of money, man. $45 million in cash.
He brought up the example of 10X and everything that they do with that company. They have online courses, they have events, they have trainings, and they just have this big empire that does over $150 million a year. And he said that even if he nets a third of that and he makes $45 million this year, where else can he really make that kind of money? Real estate is great, but most people are not gonna get paid $45 million a year in cash flow. And I really resonated with that because I have been telling people for a long time that you need to figure out how to start your own business. I don't care if it's a side hustle that ends up turning into a big business, or if it's just your career as a house flipper or a realtor or any of these types of professions that can make you a lot of money. I personally have seen my wealth grow the most from everything my businesses have done. It hasn't been my investments. So I think it's a great reminder for people watching YouTube because I think a lot of people are so focused on the investment side. What's the best Airbnb to buy? What's the best rental property market? Or what's the best crypto? What NFT is gonna go up? When in reality, their business is the one thing that they can control
and that they can influence the most. And that was part of the reason I pulled a lot of my money out of crypto, was because I couldn't control it. I could take that same nest egg and throw it at one of my businesses, which I know I can get a return on because I have pure influence on it. But you might be asking yourself, what happens once you start making enough money and you can't really put too much more into your business? How do you diversify? Well, that's where Grant and I agreed on the same thing. He said that with that 45 million, he could go throw it at some apartment buildings, and then that's gonna limit his taxes, it's gonna create cash flow, and it's an actual asset that he can own forever and pass down to his kids. And I'm of the same mindset. I wanna redirect all of my income from these businesses and throw them at real estate, because I do get those tax advantages. I do get appreciation. I do get cash flow, and there is nothing in the history of the world that has outlasted real estate. And the truth of the matter is, if you buy enough real estate, you don't ever have to pay taxes. And this is what Cardone has figured out, and even if he nets $45 million from one of his businesses, as long as he puts enough of it into real estate, he's not gonna have to pay any tax on it. And there are many people who get mad at him for that, but if you just read the tax code and understand what the government incentivizes you to do, you could play to those rules too.
You know, your business, you got True Books, right? That business is real. Like, it's real. You're helping people do their taxes. You're not just doing some claim about a diet on Instagram.
And quick side plug, if you want to learn more about taxes and ask questions directly with trained professionals, my company TrueBooks has a starter package where you get 2 Zoom calls a month with our CPAs, where you can talk tax strategy, where you can ask questions, and where you can learn how to limit your taxes and do smart things that wealthy people are doing. So go to truebookcpa.com if you want to sign up for the starter program. Now, another thing that Grant said that stood out to me was his belief in the power of people.
The one consistent thing that hasn't changed the entire time is people. People have made all this possible. The first 1,000 and the first billion. It was always people involved. Exactly what I did on Undercover Billionaire. I did not put my attention on money or the business. I put my attention on meeting the right people, qualified, able, and willing people that could actually help me and were willing to help me and were qualified to help me.
He talked about that he could not do anything that he does by himself. He needs a big army of talented people around him to create the 10X, to buy all these apartment buildings, to make the social media content. He is nothing without his team, and he admits it. I very much have been of the same belief. Everything I've been able to accomplish is because of people around me. I've learned to hire great people. I've learned to delegate. I've learned to let go. And I've learned how to incentivize people to get the best out of their abilities. And unfortunately, most people don't want to trust anyone else. They don't think that anybody could do it as good as them. Or they're too cheap. They don't want to pay somebody else to do something. And that type of thinking will always keep you playing small. There's no way to have big impact in the world without having other people around you to help your vision come to life. And this whole philosophy of hiring and delegating is something that I've been telling everyone I know for a long time. I have other friends in YouTube who spend 60 hours a week creating content, and they ask me how I'm spending so much less time on my channel, yet I'm putting out just as much, if not more, content than them. And the reality is, I just have a good team. They're the ones helping me come up with ideas, they're posting the content, they're editing, they're filming. All I have to do is talk to the camera. And it's the same thing I teach all of our students at Future Flipper when they're building their real estate investing businesses. You can do everything on your own starting out. You can go get all the deals, you can manage the projects, you can raise the money. But in order to become a true business, you need to start hiring other people. Or else you're gonna either hit a cap on how much you can make and how much you can work, because there is a limited amount of time that you have in the day, or you're gonna end up getting burnt out because you are working so many hours. And so the moment that you learn how to hire and delegate is the moment your business will start taking off, but also is the moment you're gonna start getting more time to enjoy your life. Now, during the interview, I had to ask him about the state of the real estate market and what are his next big moves. He ended up making a bet with me that in a year from now, interest rates will be even lower than they are today. He was so confident in it that he said he'll give everyone in the comments $100 if rates are higher a year from now.
I bet you and your audience, I'll give everybody that comments $100 if the interest rate is higher on November 2nd, 2022.
All right. You guys heard it first.
If you want to go qualify for that $100, I suggest you go watch the full interview on my second channel, The Ryan Pineda Show. And he was dead serious. We even made an agreement to do a podcast a year from now to see if he was right.
So I bet if me and you do an interview 1 year from now, I'll bet you interest rates are less than they are today. Even though the Fed is saying they're going to go up, me and you have a little, let's meet November 2nd next year and see where they're at.
All right, I'm gonna put it in the calendar.
But I'll tell you, I tend to agree with him. I think the government's gonna continue printing money. I think they're gonna lower interest rates. And in turn, the value of real estate is gonna continue to rise. And that's actually part of the reason why he's starting his non-accredited fund again. He wants to buy as much real estate as humanly possible. Now, I'll tell you, a non-accredited fund is not easy to start. He was telling me on the podcast that it was over $300,000. Many of you who are subscribed to this channel know that I have Pineda Capital, where I started a real estate fund for accredited investors only. And the reason it's for only accrediteds is because it's way easier to get it started and it's way less costly. So the fact that he's now transitioning back to a non-accredited fund for all the cost and all the supposed headache from dealing with small-time investments is going to be interesting to watch. He's already got a $750 million apartment building he's trying to buy with that fund. And I know that there are a ton of people who have criticized him for his non-accredited fund that he shut down, but he did bring up a good point that I thought was interesting, that non-accrediteds have never had a chance to own a piece of real estate like this. How do you get access to a $750 million apartment? It just doesn't exist. I don't even have access to buying an apartment like that. And so to be able to invest with him on these A-class properties is pretty cool. And I asked him, what's the end goal for all this? How much do you want to buy? Like, when is enough enough? And he revealed that his end goal is to buy $40 billion of real estate and then go sell it to a company like Blackstone and make a lot of money. It's definitely a lofty goal, and we'll see if he gets there, but it was just cool for me to hear that and to see how big some people think. Once you get around big thinkers, it expands the mind of yourself, and it makes you start thinking bigger too. And that was the biggest takeaway I had from interviewing Grant Cardone.
Thanks for making it to the end. The good news is I've got another one that I know you're gonna like, and all you gotta do is click it right here. Linking it right here. All you gotta do is just click it, and you're gonna see this new episode that you're gonna love.
I'm telling you, closing makes all of the difference. So if you do all this stuff, it's gonna work, but if you're not closing, it won't. So use option closes and then be assumptive. When someone gives you a yes, but you're like, I'm not sure if they're all in on this, you can't show them you're unsure if they're all in on this.